Hello, this is Jeff Byers. This is Module 2 and UV, or basically texturing Part 2. We just got done with the Substance Painter. Exported those out. I exported out 2 sets that we can experiment with. One set of textures was for Unreal 4, and the next set of textures were just basic blend-based textures that we can use. They're still considered PBR textures, but we're only going to use like 3 of them to get going. The basic idea was to bring the objects back on and then tweak out the textures and just kind of make them as efficient as possible, making sure everything lined up, the bricks lined up, as you can see here. And the only way to do that is to go into the UV editor, and I had to tweak these. I spent time. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time showing you how to texture map stuff, because you should already know how to do that. So I've got 7 objects. I know we start up with 6, but I wanted another object, so I just created it. I mean, these are very simplistic, just for examples of how you're supposed to do these modular pieces, make sure they turn out okay and that they will snap properly in Unreal. So the whole idea was mainly that. This is really not a texturing modeling tutorial. It's just more of the basis of why we need to worry about textile density, why we're looking for it, why it's important. Not really showing you how to model something really amazing, which I certainly could, but would take a lot of time, and we just don't have that time right now. You can spend that time, but right now I needed to keep it very simple so you understood it. So the idea is laying these UVs out properly. Now we got started with just UV automatic mapping. That's fine, but it didn't really there was too many seams showing. I wasn't able to get what I wanted to, and the idea is that, just kind of give you a run through of what I did do. Basically, kind of deconstruct how I did this to weld all these edges together. It's called move and sew. So I can actually cut this piece off, UV shell, and just cut it off. What you're going to do is you put all these pieces together so you have a seamless texture between the two. So the idea then is to go to edge mode, find your edges, line them up, and then go to cut and sew and go to move and sew. And so what that does is it gives you a perfect seamless texture all the way across that edge there, which is really nice. So that's the idea. I did that for all my objects. As you can see, there are some objects in there that I did not line up and move and sew because I felt like I didn't need to. Okay, like the top part, that's probably never going to be exposed anyway, and those 2 pieces are not going to match no matter what you do. Okay, you can try and try and try, but it won't work. So there's going to be an edge up there that will not work. Now the edges on the side of the corners have to match, so you have to make sure all those pieces, and as you can see, I've got everything laid out properly. Okay, and the textile density is perfect. Okay, yeah, we are wasting some space in here. If I would just select all of them at one time, there you would see some texture space, just kind of basically inefficient texture space. I'm not really interested because I'm only sharing 1 UV, and I'm actually using just one texture map, 4096, for all 7 pieces. So I think I'm using that texture space very efficiently. Even though there are those overlaying issues, I'm not too worried because they're separate objects. It doesn't matter. If it was one object and it was sharing UV, you can't overlap. But several different types of objects that are separated, absolutely. You can overlay them all you want as long as you don't have a problem with the texture. And since this is a procedural map, it doesn't really matter. So what we're going to do in here, and that's a little trick because I'm basically using one map for all of these objects. And now I can use these as building blocks for my scene, and that's kind of what I wanted to get to, is that with modular pieces, you can have all the building blocks for your entire level. Now, obviously, 6 is really minimalistic, meaning that I probably won't be able to build a whole lot of different things, but let's say if you had 20 of these, and you could build quite a bit. And there are kits that I've seen out there that are like in the hundreds of assets. We just don't have time for that, but that would be, of course, optimal is to have that many. Okay, so you could have lots of different things. Okay, so the idea now is to now once we have this all done and all the UVs looking good, then the next step, let's go ahead and close this. So the next step would be to go in here and then get this scaled up. So I'm just going to do one. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select all these, and I've already got them in layers, as you can see right here, and they're all on right now. So what I'm going to do is highlight all this, hit the 0 key, and they all line up nicely. And at the bottom here, let's go ahead and shoot that back up again. Alright, so the whole idea is to make sure that you are all in the same space, meaning that they're all in 0, 0, 0. The pivot point is at the very lower left part of the object corner. Snapped up to it perfectly. Everything's snapped perfectly. And what we're going to do now is you just take one of the objects. I'm going to take the biggest one. I'm going to turn everything else off. Okay, there's my temple piece. And we're just going to kind of test this one. Okay, so the first thing you got to do, you got to make sure that you delete your history and freeze transformations up here. Okay, you can also go to edit, delete by type history, and then you can go to modify freeze transformations up there. Alright, when that's done, what you're going to do is, we all know that it's 30.48, okay, centimeters in a foot, so 30.48, okay. I highlighted all three of those and hit enter. Alright, that looks great. Okay, perfect. That's the scale that we need. And then what I got to do is, this is important, again, delete by type history and freeze transformation. So that's all zeroed out. If you don't do that, then it may not catch it, it may not work. Okay. The next thing is you want to add all the maps to this. So what I ended up doing, it was going to assign new material. Okay. I went ahead and went to Maya and then to Blend. I know that sounds kind of strange. Blend doesn't really support PBR texturing, but it doesn't really matter. So I selected Blend, I renamed it, blah blah blah, and then in there I went into the Blend, okay, added the material, and so that material should be in there. There we go. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to add the normal map. So let's get that in there. Okay, and this will be a tangent space normal. Make sure that's selected. And I'm going to go in here to turn that off, and I'm going to click on the normal map. There we go. I'm going to keep ignoring. There's some kind of an error message I'm getting. I'm just going to ignore it. Then specular color, and this one will be the file, and we'll go ahead and do the roughness on that one. Okay, here we go. Alright, so everything looks good. Alright, so we got color, normal map for bump mapping, and then specular, we got the roughness in there. And so we're all set. Again, we're going to do this one more time. Delete by type history, freeze transformations, and then we're going to go to File, Export Selection. Under Export Selection, we're going to do FBX Export. We're going to click on Export Selection. You're going to name something, whatever. I've already got it saved, but I called it, this, and then make sure you use all underscores. And then in here you can see general options, smoothing groups is on, And I continue on. Everything looks good. I don't think I did anything except for FBX file format, FBX 2018. Went ahead and exported that out. I already did that, so I'm not going to do it again. But he exported out. Okay. And then now we're in Unreal. Open up your scene. I really highly recommend that you just open, just click on content. Once everything's up there and load it up, and your scene's loaded up, click on content, and then right-click over this and go to new folder. I would call it something like just testing. You're just going to test first. Make a folder called Jeff Test Blocks, or your name Test Blocks, or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. Now you're ready to import your stuff into that folder. Everything. Just keep everything in this particular folder. Yeah, you can go in and create a geometry folder and a materials folder. I would just put everything in there. That way you're not missing anything. Go to import and find where you need to go, and then click on your FBX and open. All right, it shouldn't take long. And you want to auto-generate collision. Now, obviously, if you did modular, you don't need to do a custom collision because you would have everything separated. Custom collisions, you can do that, but you have to do them in Maya or some other 3D package. And it's a lot of work to get it to work right, especially something very complex. Okay, especially if you're trying to build an entire building in Maya, and then you're going to want to walk in it. That's why we do modular pieces. Yeah, you can save a lot of time doing that, but you're going to smack your head against the wall pretty hard just trying to figure out the collisions that need to go on there. So, another thing is, yeah, some of you have already figured out that you can do a collision that is per vertex in Unreal. How long do you think that's going to take before you bog down your graphics card and crash it? Not very long. Okay, especially if you have a very complex object. It's gonna take forever to try to figure that collision out. So do modular. Trust me, it's the way to go. Alright, so we're gonna go into import all, and that may take a little bit. Make sure that you have material selected. I didn't really go over that, but there's a little check mark in there, and it usually has it on anyway by default, so you shouldn't have any problems. And there we go. So the problem I had was it just did not see the collision. So if I click on the block, there's my block. It's the correct size, but it does not have collisions on there. So I'm going to go in here and double click on the material. And basically what I'm going to do, for some reason there's some kind of an update issue that I'm seeing with this. I'm not sure why, so I'm just going to delete these. Okay. So I'm going to dump these in here real quick. So I'm going to have the base color, then I've got my normal map, and then I got my spec map. Okay. Let's get these put in there. So my normal goes into the normal slot. This guy goes into, my color goes in the color slot. And then we see that we've got this little guy here. The roughness goes into the spec map. I just happen to have this set up just, regular specular. I'm not doing a PBR. PBR would be base, metallic, roughness, and then normal. And then sometimes they have the ambient occlusion in there as well. It does look better, absolutely. And there's a video that I've given you guys if you want to do that. Right now we're just kind of testing the scale and all that stuff, and I'm going to be a little more particular later on, and you guys should be too. Let's go ahead and save that. So that looks like it's working now. So once it saves, it'll put it back into the content folder and update that properly. Let's go ahead and close that once that's saved. And now we're ready to drag and drop. There she is. And if you look at my the way I had scaled things up in it's perfect. I don't know what the heck people are doing in other in Unreal. They got to do this convoluted, crazy grid thing in Maya where that makes no sense when I know centimeters is centimeters. And if 30.848 centimeters equals 1 foot, then why wouldn't it work in Maya? So you take, if you do the grid work like I asked you to, you should have 8 foot. Like, it's perfect, and it snaps perfectly. There's no issues here whatsoever. If we're in 10 by 10, it should work perfectly. Let me hold the Alt key, move that over, and there it is. This perfect snap. Perfect snap. Yeah, I don't know. There's some crazy grid stuff you can do in Maya. It's just to me, it's just convoluted. It doesn't make any. I don't know. This works fine. So I need you to put all those pieces in. I need you to build a temple, the main temple for me for this one, for module 2. You'll build your temple. Everything else looks pretty good. And we'll have an introduction that you'll see earlier than this one. But anyway, good luck, have fun, and enjoy. And be safe.